It all started one evening when I least expected it. I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard something that made my blood run cold. It wasn't his voice. No, it was the sound of his voice. Practicing. I couldn't believe my ears. There he was, rehearsing a breakup speech, one he had clearly prepared with malicious intent. He had no idea I was there, listening, but I couldn't move. I felt frozen in place. His words cut deep, more deeply than any insult ever could. "It's not you, it's me. I've met someone else," he said, with a tone that sounded too rehearsed, too practiced. I felt nauseous, my heart racing in my chest. He thought I would stay, just like every time before. He thought I would forgive him and let it all slide. The irony was thick in the air. He had no idea that he was about to be exposed, in a way he couldn't even fathom. He continued, unaware that I could hear every word, every lie, every manipulative phrase. "You don't deserve this," he said. It was laughable. After everything, after all the years of deceit, he was now playing the martyr. And here I was, the woman who had given him everything, left in the shadows while he schemed. He never saw it coming, did he? The man I once called my partner was now my enemy, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it this time. I stood there, silently, my heart sinking with every word he spoke. His words were toxic, like poison being poured into my soul. It wasn't just about him wanting to leave. It was about the way he wanted to humiliate me, the way he was planning to turn everything I had worked for into a joke, and then walk away like it didn't matter. He betrayed me, and in doing so, he betrayed the very love and trust I had shown him. He had no idea what was coming next. There, I was in the darkness, quietly absorbing everything. She cried in silence, just like I had. All those years, all those nights, silently suffering, thinking it was my fault. But now, I saw the truth. I saw the ugly reality of who he truly was, and I wasn't going to sit back and let him destroy me. This was my breaking point. I wasn't going to cry in silence anymore. I felt my hands shake as I reached for my phone. I had to gather evidence. I had to prove to myself and to the world that I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. I found the messages. They were exactly what I needed. Proof that he had been lying, cheating, and planning all along, but I wasn't going to rush into a confrontation. No, I was smarter than that. I would wait, I would plan, and when the time was right, I would expose him. That night, I sat quietly in the corner of the room, thinking about the years I had spent with him. I had always believed in us, but now the truth came out, and I realized I had been living in a fantasy. He had never seen me for who I truly was. To him, I was nothing. I was an accessory to his life. I was nothing to him. I knew I had to be strategic. I wasn't going to let my emotions drive me. This was about revenge, but it had to be calculated, precise. I would make him regret everything. My silence was my answer. I didn't need to scream or beg. I just needed to show him what he had done. And that's exactly what I was going to do. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was it. This was the moment everything would change. I was done. He thought he could walk away from me without consequences, but she planned it all. I had been working in silence, gathering the pieces, preparing for the right moment, and I would show him that he was not the one in control anymore. Tomorrow would be the beginning of the end for him. When she was captured, I would be the one to take back control. No more lies, no more manipulation. This was my moment. I woke up the next morning with one thought running through my head. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. There was no going back. What he had done, what he had planned to do, was unforgivable, but I had to stay calm. I couldn't let my anger take over. I needed to think, to strategize. I had always been the one who kept things together, who made the right decisions when it counted. Now was no different. The first thing I did was clear my head. I had to put my emotions aside and think about what I wanted to accomplish. I wasn't just going to confront him. No, that would be too easy. I needed to hit him where it hurt. The one place he thought he was safe. His empire. The very foundation he thought he had built with all his lies and deceit. I would take it. All from him. I started by looking into his finances. It didn't take long for me to uncover something strange. There were irregular transfers, suspicious accounts, things that didn't add up. And then I found it. A shell company he had set up. One that was linked to Lydia's brother. It was a mess of financial fraud, and all the pieces were right. There in front of me, he had been embezzling money, skimming off the top, and hiding it in this company. I was shocked, but at the same time, I felt empowered. This was my ammunition. This was the proof I needed. The next step was to talk to my lawyer. I needed to make sure I was covered. If I was going to take him down, I needed everything to be airtight. No room for error. It felt like I was preparing for war, but I was ready. The truth came out slowly, piece by piece. And with each discovery, I felt more certain that I was doing the right thing. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was protecting my future, my dignity, and everything I had worked for. I knew Colton would fight back, but I wasn't afraid. He was the one who had crossed the line, not me. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, it all led to this moment. I couldn't let him have the upper hand anymore. I was deceived for so long, believing in a man who never really cared about me. But now I had the upper hand. It was time to use the weapons I had gathered against him. I spent the next few days meticulously preparing. I gathered every piece of evidence, every document, every message that could prove his betrayal. I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to make sure there was no way for him to escape the consequences of his actions. I would show him that I wasn't the woman he thought I was, the woman who would just sit back and accept his lies. He thought I would stay, that I would tolerate it like I had in the past. But this time, things were different. I was no longer the woman who kept quiet, who played the role of the dutiful wife. No, I had changed. The woman he thought he knew was gone. I was stronger now. I wasn't going to be the one to get hurt. He was. I knew the next step had to be calculated. I couldn't just confront him and let him slip away. I needed to hit him when he was most vulnerable, when he thought he was safe. And so, I waited. I watched. I kept everything in place, ready for the perfect moment. There was a calmness to my plan now, a quiet certainty. I was no longer reacting. Out of anger, I was thinking, analyzing, and waiting. Every moment felt like a step closer to the moment when I would expose him. He would see that I wasn't just a woman he could walk all over. I would be the one to show him what betrayal truly felt like. At this point, I knew that going into battle without proper evidence would be a mistake. I couldn't rely on just my instincts anymore. I needed concrete proof that would leave no room for doubt. My lawyer had been clear. Documentation was everything. Without it, I would be at his mercy. The problem was, I had to appear completely unaware. If he suspected that I knew anything, he would cover his tracks, and that would be the end of it. I remember feeling an overwhelming sense of urgency. My silence was my answer to all the questions swirling around me. Every day I played the part, pretending. Everything was normal, hiding my growing knowledge of his betrayal. But inside, I was a different person. I was on a mission, and nothing could distract me from the path I had set. The more I searched, the more I found. It was like peeling back the layers of a carefully constructed lie, one that had been built over years. I found emails, texts, receipts, and most damning of all, I found the messages. Conversations between Colton and Lydia that left nothing to the imagination. It was all there. He had been planning his escape with her for months, and I had never even suspected it. My heart sank as I read through them, but I didn't let the betrayal shake me. No, I was focused now. This was my chance to get everything I needed to destroy him. Each document I uncovered felt like another piece of the puzzle falling into place. The financial fraud, the lies, the affair. It was all there, waiting for me to pull it together. It was like watching a slow-motion train wreck. Only this time, I was the one in control. I had the power now, and Colton had no idea what was coming. He never saw it coming. One thing was clear to me: I couldn't rush this. I had to build a solid case. I needed to be thorough and precise. Every step I took had to be calculated. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking back my power and ensuring that he couldn't hurt me or anyone else again. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep his deception ran. But there was something even more important. I had to make sure that when I exposed him, it would be in a way that no one could ignore. I didn't just want to hurt him. I wanted to make him understand the full extent of what he had done. He had taken my trust, my love, and my loyalty, and thrown them away. And now, I would take everything from him. I wasn't just playing a game anymore. This was real. This was about my life, my future, and my dignity. He had broken me first, but now I was the one in control. I spent hours organizing everything, figuring out how to present it, when to drop the bombshell. Every detail mattered. She planned it all, every little piece of this revenge. From the moment I found out, I knew it had to be perfect. No one could doubt my motives. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about justice. It was about standing up for myself after all those years of being pushed aside, in a strange way. I almost felt at peace with it. There was something empowering about knowing that I held all the cards. For once, the tables were turned, and Colton had no idea what I had in store for him, but I knew I had to wait for the right time. The perfect moment would come, and when it did, he would regret ever thinking I was just a fool who wouldn't fight back. The next step was crucial. It wasn't just about revealing what I knew. It was about making sure that when the truth came out, it would destroy him completely. I had to be smart, I had to be patient, and I had to make sure that nothing would slip through the cracks. The night had finally arrived. The dinner that Colton had been planning for weeks to announce his betrayal to me, to publicly humiliate me. The irony of it all hit me hard. He thought he could pull off his little drama in front of clients, colleagues, and even our closest friends. He thought it would be just another one of his manipulative tactics to make me look like the fool, but I had something else in mind. I wasn't going to sit quietly and let him destroy everything I had worked so hard for. When we walked into the steakhouse, I could feel the tension in the air. It was like I could already see the scene unfolding in front of me. The lights, The laughter, the way Colton would stand up and make his speech, pretending to feel sorry for what he was about to do. Little did he know, I had something far more powerful planned. I had the proof, the hard evidence that would expose him for who he truly was. As we settled into our seats, I could barely keep the smile off my face. I could see it in his eyes. He was nervous. He thought I hadn't figured it out, that I was still blind to his plans, but I had already made my move. I had the truth in my hands. Every message, every email, every piece of evidence I had gathered came down to this moment. I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I was about to take control. The waiter arrived with our drinks, and Colton started to speak about the celebration. His words were smooth, rehearsed, almost as if he had done this 100 times before. I listened, pretending to be captivated by his words. When inside, I was calculating my next move. This was my moment, the moment I had waited for. Then, just as he was about to drop the bomb on me, I handed him an envelope. He stared at it, confused, not knowing what to make of it. His smirk faltered as he took it from my hands. I could see the flicker of panic in his eyes, but he still tried to play it cool. He never saw it coming. "Go ahead," I said, my voice low but steady. "You can open it." And just like that, the entire dynamic of the room shifted. Colton slowly opened the envelope, his hand shaking slightly as he pulled out the papers inside. As he scanned them, his face turned pale. He didn't need to read it all. He knew exactly what was on those pages. I showed him the proof, the undeniable evidence of his betrayal, the lies, the affair with Lydia, the financial fraud, everything. It was all there, right in front of him, in front of everyone. The people around us started to notice the change in the atmosphere. The silence grew heavy, like a storm about to break. Colton's face turned bright red as he looked up at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. He thought I would stay, that I would just take his humiliation and do nothing, but he had underestimated me. I wasn't the same woman I used to be, the woman who would cry in silence, who would put up with his lies. No, not anymore. "Do you really think I didn't know?" I asked him, my voice calm but firm. "Do you think I was too blind to see the truth?" His response was a mixture of anger and desperation. He stammered, trying to find words to defend himself, but it was too late. The truth was out, and it was far worse than he had imagined. I had waited for this moment for so long, and now that it was here, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. Not because I wanted to see him suffer, but because I wanted to show him that I was more than just a victim. I was no longer the person he thought I was. I was stronger, smarter, and I was taking my life back. The room was silent as everyone looked from Colton to me, unsure of what to say or do. But I wasn't looking for their approval. I wasn't even looking for Colton's reaction. I had already won. The people around us, the clients, the friends, none of them mattered. What mattered was that I had reclaimed my power. As Colton sputtered and tried to defend himself, the waiter came over, sensing the tension in the air. It was time for me to make my final move. I stood up, my voice calm and collected, but with a finality that left no room for negotiation. "I'm done," I said. "This dinner is over." And with that, I turned and walked out, leaving Colton to deal with the consequences of his actions. The chaos from the dinner didn't end with me walking out of that steakhouse. No, Colton's carefully constructed world was starting to unravel, piece by piece, in front of everyone who had witnessed his betrayal. He thought he could control the narrative, that he could keep me in the dark while he went about his plans, ruining everything I held dear. But the truth was out, and it was spreading fast. I had prepared for this moment long before that dinner. I knew that once I exposed Colton, it wouldn't just be the end of our relationship. It would be the end of everything he had worked so hard to build. He thought that by manipulating me, by keeping me in the dark for so long, he could walk away scot-free, but he never saw it coming. Within hours, the emails and messages started pouring in. The clients who had been at the dinner reached out to me privately, expressing their shock and disbelief. It wasn't just Colton's personal betrayal. They had seen the professional side of him too. The lies he had fed them, the manipulations, the way he had used them to cover his tracks. I had been so caught up in the emotional betrayal, I hadn't realized just how deep his deceit had run. But now, I was seeing it all clearly. He had broken me first, and I had spent so long trying to hold it together, to protect the life we had built, that I had missed the warning signs. I was so focused on keeping up appearances, on pretending everything was fine, that I hadn't even noticed how much damage he was doing, not just to me, but to everyone around us. As the day went on, the calls kept coming in. His friends, his colleagues, they were all asking the same thing. What happened? What's going on? I could feel the weight of it all on my shoulders, but at the same time, a strange sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying that burden alone. The truth had come out, and now it was everyone else's turn to face it. Colton was scrambling, I could see it in his texts, in his attempts to explain, to justify his actions. But there was no justification for what he had done. No way to sugarcoat the fact that he had betrayed me in the worst way possible. Betrayal was an ugly thing, and no matter how much he tried to twist the story, the truth remained the same. He had stolen from me, emotionally, financially, and morally. I didn't have to say anything anymore. The truth spoke for itself. And the messages, the evidence, everything. It was all laid bare for everyone to see. Colton was no longer in control of the narrative. The carefully crafted image he had built of himself was collapsing in real time. What was even more satisfying was seeing how his lies had caught up with him. She exposed him. Lydia, his mistress, had no idea that by keeping those messages, by leaving behind that trail of breadcrumbs, she had set the stage for his downfall. Colton had been so focused on his own plans, on his own selfish desires, that he had completely underestimated me. He thought he could just push me aside, but he didn't know how strong I was. He never thought I would actually fight back. And fight back, I did. The power was in my hands now. As the world around him started to crumble, I remained calm. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to make a scene. The truth had already done all the work for me. There was no turning back for Colton. His reputation was ruined, his lies exposed, and the people he had deceived were now seeing him for who he truly was. He begged me to come back, of course, but I didn't need to listen to his desperate pleas. I had already made my decision. I had already moved on. And as for him, well, he would have to live with the consequences of his actions, just like everyone else who thought they could walk all over me and get away with it. The moment I walked away from that dinner, I felt the weight of the world lift from my shoulders. But as I drove home, something inside me shifted. No longer was I the victim of Colton's manipulations or lies. I was a force, and I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to thrive. The betrayal I had endured no longer defined me. Instead, it became fuel for the fire that was about to ignite in my life. I had spent years building something with Colton, but in one moment I realized it wasn't just the business or the house or the status I cared about. It was my power, my self-respect, and my ability to create my own future. And I wasn't about to let him take that from me. As he spiraled, trying to cover his tracks, I focused on one thing: reclaiming control. I had to protect myself, my daughter, and everything I had worked for. The first step was securing my financial independence. I couldn't rely on Colton anymore, not after everything that had happened. I reached out to my lawyer and began making sure that all our assets were properly protected. I wanted to ensure that no matter how this played out, I would have a solid foundation beneath me. I didn't want to be left scrambling, not when I had the power to change the narrative. As the days went by, I became more resolute. Colton thought he could break me, but all he did was awaken a version of me I didn't even know existed. He betrayed me, and at first, it hurt more than I could ever put into words. But pain is transformative, isn't it? I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was determined. He had pushed me to the edge, and now I was going to rebuild myself stronger than ever. What Colton didn't realize was that I had already started laying the groundwork for what would come next. My silence had been my answer all along. The more, he begged, the more I withdrew into myself, not because I was weak, but because I was carefully planning my next move. I wasn't going to fight fire with fire. I was going to let the truth and my actions speak for themselves. He never saw it coming. He thought I would stay, that I would accept his apologies, that I would come crawling back to him. But that's not how things work. Betrayal doesn't just disappear with a few words of regret. It leaves scars, deep ones that change the course of your life. And for me, those scars were a reminder of how far I had come, and how far I was willing to go. To protect myself, it wasn't just about taking back what was mine. It was about showing myself and the world that I had control over my own destiny. I had been deceived, manipulated, and betrayed, but none of that defined me. What defined me was the strength I showed in the face of adversity. What defined me was my refusal to let someone else's lies destroy everything I had worked for. As I took the reins of our company and pushed forward, I knew I wasn't just reclaiming control over my business. I was reclaiming control over my life, my future, and my happiness. And I wasn't going to let anyone, especially not Colton, take that away from me. He had broken me first, but in the end, I was going to be the one who walked away stronger. Began to rebuild. It was hard. Every day felt like a battle, but it was a battle I was determined to win. I had learned from the best, and now it was my turn to shine. I had a company to run, a daughter to protect, and a life to reclaim, and I was ready to show the world exactly what I was capable of. Colton, meanwhile, was left to watch from the sidelines as his life spiraled out of control. He begged me to come back, of course, but I had made my decision. The power was mine now, and nothing, not even him, could take that away from me. As the months passed, I found myself thinking back to everything my father had taught me. He wasn't just a brilliant businessman. He was a man who understood the value of resilience. He had always said, "The strongest trees grow in the harshest conditions." I'd seen the truth of that over and over, especially now. The more Colton tried to tear me down, the more I grew. And each day, I became more certain that my father's lessons weren't just about business. They were about life. It wasn't easy at first. There were days when I doubted myself, when I questioned everything I had been doing. But in those moments of doubt, I remembered the power of resilience. I didn't have to be perfect. I just had to be persistent. I kept my focus on what mattered most, my family, my business, and the future I was building. And with each step forward, I could feel the strength inside me growing. I spent countless hours, just me and my thoughts, planning what came next. I wanted to make sure that Colton's betrayal didn't just go unanswered. I wanted it to fuel something greater. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about taking back control of my narrative and creating something even bigger than I had before. I knew that in order to truly move on, I had to turn the page and start writing a new chapter. That new chapter started with my company. As the CEO, I made strategic decisions that would lay the foundation for years to come. I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to thrive. And the first step was ensuring that I was leading my team with confidence and clarity. I surrounded myself with people I could trust, people who shared my vision, and together we began to turn the business around. The growth was steady, but it was real. Every milestone we hit was a testament to the strength I had gained through all of this. It wasn't just my professional life that was flourishing. As I took back control, I began to see the impact on my personal life too. My daughter was thriving, and she could see the strength in me. I wanted her to know that no matter what happened, she had the power to rise above anything that came her way. I wasn't just rebuilding for me, I was rebuilding for her future. She needed to see that a woman could stand tall, no matter the odds. There were days when I thought about Colton, and I realized how little he mattered anymore. His betrayal, the pain, it was all in the past. He was just a chapter in my story, a chapter that had ended. And while I had once been deceived by his lies, I had learned so much from those experiences. I'd learned how strong I truly was, how resilient, and how capable of creating a future on my own terms. Looking back, I could see that everything had happened for a reason. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the challenges, they had all been part of the process. It was like the universe had thrown me into the fire to forge me into someone I never thought I could be. And I wasn't just stronger for it, I was unstoppable. As I stood at the helm of my business, I could feel my father's presence guiding me. His legacy wasn't just in the company he built, it was in the way I approached life. I had learned to face adversity head-on, to take the lessons from each setback and use them to propel myself forward. And that's exactly what I did. Every decision, every move I made, was a reflection of the strength I had built through the pain. Colton was gone, but his betrayal had only served to remind me of my own power. I wasn't the same person I was before all of this. I was stronger, smarter, more determined than ever. And now, with my foundation built on strength, I knew that nothing could ever break me again. I was ready for whatever the future held, and I was going to own it. I had done it. I had risen from the ashes, and now I was building a life on my terms. This wasn't just a victory over Colton. This was a victory over everything that had ever tried to hold me back. And with every step I took, I could feel myself getting closer to the life I had always dreamed of. A life where I controlled the narrative, where I was the one who wrote the story. It wasn't just about winning anymore. At first, revenge had been my driving force. I had wanted to get back at Colton, to make him feel the pain he had put me through. But somewhere along the way, that desire shifted. What I had really wanted all along wasn't revenge. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you're in control of your own life, from watching your dreams unfold in front of you, and from realizing that the worst things that happened to you were just stepping stones toward your true purpose. As I moved forward, I realized that everything I had been through, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the struggles, had been part of a much bigger plan. I had been through so much, but each hardship had shaped me into someone stronger, more focused, and more capable than I could have ever imagined. And it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the legacy I was building for my daughter, for my future, for the people who believed in me. I had learned to trust myself in ways I never had before. Where I once questioned my decisions, now I knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. I had taken control of my narrative, and that alone gave me the power to transform everything. I didn't need anyone's validation anymore, especially not Colton's. What mattered was what I thought of myself, and for the first time, I truly loved who I had become. My company had flourished in ways I hadn't even imagined. With Colton out of the picture, I was free to run things the way I saw fit, and things were looking better than ever. We had hit new milestones, expanded into new markets, and secured partnerships that had once seemed impossible. Every decision I made was backed by the strength and clarity that came from knowing I was living my truth. And that success wasn't just financial, it was personal. It was proof that I could do it, and I was doing it on my terms. In the midst of all this success, I realized that I had achieved something far greater than just professional triumph. I had found peace within myself. There was no longer any anger, no need for revenge. Colton's betrayal, though painful, had been the catalyst for my transformation. But now, he was a distant memory, and in his place, I had built a life that I was proud of, a life where I was the one calling the shots. Looking back, I could see how much I had grown. The woman I had been, who was broken and unsure, was nothing like the woman I had become. I had stood up for myself, taken control, and refused to let anyone define my worth. I had built a new foundation, stronger than ever, and I was standing on it, ready to take on whatever came next. And no matter what happened, I knew I would be okay. The satisfaction wasn't in Colton's downfall, even though that had been sweet. It wasn't in seeing him beg for my forgiveness, or watching him struggle to rebuild his own life. No, the true satisfaction came from knowing I had survived. I had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to me and turned it into my greatest triumph. I had taken back my life, my power, and my future, and that was the most important victory of all. My relationship with my daughter had grown stronger too. She had seen it all. She had seen me fight, fall, and rise again. She had seen me refuse to let anyone define my worth. And now, she knew what real strength looked like. I wanted her to know that no matter what life threw her way, she could always rise above. She didn't have to wait for anyone's permission to be the woman she was meant to be. As I stood there, watching the future unfold before me, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for the lessons I had learned, for the strength I had gained, and for the woman I had become. The story wasn't over yet, but I knew that no matter what happened next, I was ready for it. I had done the work, I had paid the price, and I had earned my place at the top. And that was something no one could ever take away from me. The truth was, I had already won. It wasn't the kind of victory I had originally imagined, but it was so much better. This was the victory that came from knowing my own worth, from building a future that was mine to create, and from stepping into the full power of who I was. And now, with the world at my feet, I was ready to keep going, to keep building, to keep growing, and to keep thriving.